Ladies and gentlemen, live from Jingara in Australia, we have the infamous Giles. And many of you have been searching for him online, and to no avail, and that's because he has gone silent. Except for solarminimum.net, which is getting added to and updated weekly, apparently, according to CF. And we have CF Live on his farm, which has been implementing some amazing permaculture in recent times. How the heck are you, CF?
Yeah, doing really well, Diamond. Things are going fantastic here. The last 12 months, I've had a tremendous change since our last interview, which was during the drought of 2019-2020, and I've had a tremendous amount of rainfall. The growth and the implementation of the components of permaculture that I've done have been phenomenal. They've really absolutely taken off, and the produce that I'm developing from the farm at the moment is beyond my expectations, to the point where I have to give food away. There's too much, and that's a great spot to be in.
Yeah, and as the learning curve increases, so you've already got the abundance part, the next year becomes ridiculous abundance. And then you really need, unless you have a lot of animals to feed it to, you're going to want to get that to like a food bank or something. And we have places down in town where we can dump off our produce on Wednesday for the church, the free meal that's at the church. And so you can easily find places like that. But just to get people up to speed with what's going on, you're in a different hemisphere. Now, up here in the northern hemisphere, we are going into summer. Everyone's planting, and it's in full swing. But where you are, it would be equivalent to, let's say, our October.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, so it's fall here at the moment. So you can see that some of the trees, like the pears, are starting to change their leaf colour, and so all the deciduous trees are starting to drop their leaf. It's basically the end of the peak growing season. Things are slowing down. I've had a succession of frosts come through the property, which means that it's now starting to get very slow in growing. But it's also a great time for planting here, and quite different to your area. That I don't get as cold as you do, and I actually retain a fair bit of soil moisture during winter, and so I can actually have another crop going through winter. It's a very slow growing crop, but we can get into that in a minute. But what I can show you is some of the last of the produce that I've collected. I've put them here on the table.
Oh yeah.
This is a Cozell zucchini, and so this is now changing colour now, which means it's got a very hard shell on it, and that's going to be my seed for next year. These are black beauties. They do change colour as they ripen up. It is edible in this state, and you can actually use them. But these are largely just for seed collection for me. Under here, I've actually got the last of the potatoes that I pulled up, and so I've got some fantastic jug creams. But I'm just keeping a cover over them so they don't go green. As you can see, I'm growing monster daikon radish.
Wow.
That one's about 11 or 12 inches long. And you can see on the remainder of the table here, there are a plethora of Jarrahdale pumpkins. These are an Australian variety that have been hybridised between a couple of the European and American species, but they're very well suited to the environment around here. And that's about half of what I have generated this year, because I've actually given away most of the pumpkins because they've been very popular. But as you can see over here in the raised beds, I've now got some broad beans coming up, and that's going to be the next step in actually keeping these beds going. But as we transition into the permaculture garden, I've got some sunchokes here. Now, they didn't flower this year, but they have generated a lot of nodules, as you can see there.
Oh yeah.
And so there's a lot of food.
Nice.
There's a lot of food just sitting there. So I'm going to pull those out and store them during winter, and then replant them into some harder soil. I don't think they liked that compost soil very much. It was a little bit too friable and loose for them. They like heavier, harder soil to have to break into.
Yeah,
but,
and
as you can see,
just a tip, Giles, if I could chime in. Our sunchokes over winter, and we get to -10, and you probably only get to around 20, right?
20 Fahrenheit. That'd be about right.
Yeah. So you're zone 7, we're zone 5. In our zone, we can overwinter them. They don't even freeze because they're typically like 6 or 7 inches underground, a lot of the tubers. So the deeper tubers will resprout for us in the spring, ding, ding, and you could just keep them in there all winter. And on a sunny day, if you're starving, just dig out a bunch of them and they're fresh. The problem and the reason we don't have the Jerusalem artichoke in the stores is because you cannot store it. So if you were to pull those out and try to store it in a fridge, in like a week, it's over. But what you can do is roll them up in straw like you're thinking and store them in the dark to replant them, like a bulb.
Yeah, but now noting what you've just said, what I'll actually do is I'll just transplant them into the spots I want them to come up in spring at a depth where they'll be fine. Because I don't have any ground-based rodents like you do, so I don't have any pocket gophers or anything like that cause me issues. All the rodents around here are basically at the surface or just below the surface. Bastard. So, I've got now 18 fruit trees here in this small food forest in front of the house. Primarily the large trees are the pear trees. The pear trees were the first ones that I put in. I've also got guavas. I've got nashi pears. I've got nectarines, peaches, but also, just these beds that are in here are largely all compost swales that I created with some hugelkultur in some of them. And these ones initially started out just with straw bales with the compost soil mounted over the top of the hugelkultur behind them. And they've gone very well, but the straw's broken down, so the swales are now starting to flatten out a bit. But what it's done is it's created a fantastic growing area. So the ongoing composting of deep filled timber with that hugelkultur is making amazing soil. And so this is now just randomly growing lots of daikon radish out of it. I've got rosemary at the front of it. Coming up here, you can see the remainder of the large zucchini. One of the large zucchini plants. I've got garlic now in replacing some of those. So there's some garlic down here. I've done a real mix and match and just trying different things. And this is what I love about permaculture. It's not lines of rows and perfection. Okay, that's great in the greenhouse where you need to optimize your space and maximize what you're doing. But permaculture is an experiment for me, and I've really enjoyed doing things like making huge batches of EM1 and covering the entire garden with EM1 and then following it up with the molasses water a week later and then another batch of molasses water the week after that, and seeing the bacteria growth and just watching the evolution of the composting and the smell. The smell of the soil in the garden's changed. When I first arrived here, it was very, very mineral earth. There wasn't much compost in the soil around the house here. The entire property had been effectively cleared at one point in time and graded, and a lot of machinery went through here. A lot of large trees were cut down out of the forest back mid last century. And so the majority of the property is regrowth. But it takes so long to regenerate soil out of the native forestry in Australia. By doing this EM1 and building up these swales and these compost beds, I've accelerated it to such a point that I'm now retaining water in all of these amazing small little landscape areas because I've done small pocket swales. I haven't done one long chain of swale. I've gone from a little pocket to a little pocket to a little pocket to make sure that I can actually then maximize the collection of the compost into those swales where they can then store the water and then feed the tree sitting on the other side of the bank or in the bank itself. And I can't speak highly enough for the guidance that you've given people, but also Matt Powers, Jeff Lawton, people like that. It certainly has changed how I eat completely now. And, not only have I given up drinking, I've lost a lot of weight. I'm a lot happier. My arthritis is next to gone, and it's all because of diet. It's all about surrounding yourself with healthy plants, healthy garden. And I walk out every morning and I just look at this place and I go, I'm so glad I'm here. It just makes me happy to be here every day. It really does. But, I've got some awesome little things, like I've got some purple broccoli coming up now. And this is just a plant that popped up from a bit of seed that I threw around. These are the pineapple guavas. I've then got some red California poppies, and they're also very good for the bees. This is a large globe artichoke, and it's now gone to seed, and I'm now collecting the seed before they all fly away. I ate about a dozen of these through summer, and they were delectable, absolutely fantastic. So I've got more poppies, and I've got more kale popping up everywhere. We'll go into the greenhouse in just a minute, but I'll just show you the berries. So the berry patch, I've put in boysenberries, loganberries, and there's a thornless blackberry in there, and they're going really, really well. The goats are all over the back of the pen at the moment. They're all very quiet because it's coming up to the middle of the day for their sleeping time, so they might pop their head up a little bit later.
Now let's
go in the greenhouse.
You don't have any berries on there, right? They're over for the season.
Oh, well and truly over. But I got 18 kilos off the berries this year, and so I have 2 full drawers in my freezer, completely and utterly full of berries. It's just fantastic. So I pick enough and store enough to have them year round. Effectively, it's fantastic.
Yeah, brilliant.
So in the greenhouse, I'm in a transition phase. So as you can see, the shelves up the back here are fairly empty at the moment, and I've only got a few new seedling trays coming up. But at the moment, I've got some garlic popping up with butter crunch lettuce, and I'm trying to get this to come up and go to seed. I've then got some nice bull's blood. Sorry, Detroit. These are Detroits, not bull's blood. Sorry.
Okay.
Beetroot. These are my sacrificial bug attack kale. So effectively, I leave these in here just to ensure that the bugs go to there and not anything else. I've got some nice peppers coming on.
Wow.
So these are just green peppers. So they're still going, they're still flowering. I've then got some bull's blood beetroot, and they're just about at that picking point at the moment. So, they're coming up nicely. And I've been eating about 1 or 2 of those a day. And then I've got this bed, which is in transition phase to a garlic bed with the remainder of the chilies. In the main bed, this is the latest area which I'm growing at the moment. So these are daikon radish here in the corner. We then transition into the French breakfast. Then we transition into a series of gladian onions, which are the brown onions, some more French radish, and then I'll be planting out some spinach into these lines here. I had a mouse in here at one point, and the mouse was eating all the seeds for the spinach. It didn't touch the radish or anything else, just the spinach. So these are a little bit empty here. I've then got some broccoli, which I'll thin out soon. And this was meant to be spinach as well. And then I've got some gold ball turnip. And then we've got some giant Alyssa onions down here. So over this side here, in these trays.
How is the bull's blood for eating?
I like it. It. They're good. They're a lot darker. They're a lot more maroon. So the Detroit is great. It's a burgundy colour, but the bull's blood is really super dark. It's a really high beta carotene beetroot, and I like the dark purple leaves because they've got a lot of extra nutrient in with all that additional purple.
Excellent.
So I've got some English in this tray here. And I've got some Toscana kale, which is the black kale, and you can see they're just starting to pop up there now. And then in this tray here, I've got some more of the blue curly kale. Down here, I've got some comfrey, which I'll transplant out into the garden in spring. And then these are walnut trees, which I've grown from seed. So I've actually started growing a whole stack of nut trees to plant into the forest. And I've actually also put my hand to growing some ginger in the greenhouse, and that's actually been highly successful. I'm quite proud of that. I've had some fist-sized lumps come out from putting a very small amount in the first place, and then I've got some goji berries there in the corner, which I'll be transplanting out in spring. So it's been my first year with the greenhouse, and I've learnt some lessons about airflow and ensuring that there's enough airflow in here to make that work. And so, as you can see, I've fitted some solar-powered fans to the roof, and because the airflow doesn't, or when it's a really still day, no air comes in and out of the greenhouse, regardless of whether you have the doors open or not. There's only a small amount, and it'll go straight past the roof. But down low, the air stays very static. And so, some DC 12-volt fans with some small solar panels outside, and effectively, I've got them turned off at the moment because they're a little bit noisy. But on these still days like it is today, you let it run all day, and there's no cost to it once you've installed it because it's solar powered, and it just continually just keeps the air flowing through. It means you've got less chances of mildew forming inside the greenhouse, which is the challenging thing to deal with. Coming out here, as you can see, the bees are nice and active today, and these are Italian bees. And this hive I've had now for since February, so they've now set themselves up very nicely, and they're creating some fantastic comb inside. They've just about filled the top frame, so I'm just about to put another box on. But noting that we're coming into the cooler season, I'm questioning whether or not I put another box on now, noting that my forest will start flowering soon, but I need to balance between putting the box on and have them having enough of their own honey to survive through winter as it cools down. Fruit trees are going really well. I've started doing some bulk soil amendment through putting large amounts of compost mulch down. So effectively, this is purely just rotting sticks and bark, and that's about 18 to 20 inches deep. And then I've planted the apple trees into this area, and so I've got a whole stack of nice apple trees in here. And there were some small apples on there for their first season this year, and it's really enjoyable just watching the change as it comes along. With the main veggie garden, I've recently cleaned it out, and so it's now all in preparation for broad beans. And so this entire area will be broad beans, apart from the raised beds, which will be cauliflower. So I'll do 3 beds of cauliflower. So I'm going to move some of the soil into there, and then generate more soil again this year through the use of broad beans. And then with the broad beans, I'll put the layers of straw from a whole stack of straw bales, which I'm about to get, over the top of that, and then that will then start generating the next spring and summer's worth of soil. The soil in here is absolutely fantastic. It's now at least 18 to 24 inches deep of just beautiful chocolate, loamy compost soil. So there's nothing I can grow. There's nothing I can't grow, sorry. It's just, how much effort can I put in? And
now
because I've got a lot of work going.
All the broad beans you're putting in, do you put up trellis for them to climb, or what do you do?
In here, yes, but also when you plant them really close together, they actually support each other. And because this area here has this forest to protect it from wind, it's not open to high wind, and so the highest wind I get through here might be 15 to 20 miles per hour. So it's not huge wind that comes through here because of the protection that the forest gives. So this is the other part of the berry area. And so you can see there are still flowers on, and the bees are servicing them. And you can see that there are occasional little bits of fruit coming on, but they're burning off with the frost.
Yeah.
So, but that's typical of this time of year. But the sheer amount of growth this year has been fantastic. And I'll just quickly show you guys, because the goats have come over.
Meh.
That's Chubbs. That's Mocha.
Hey, Chubbs. Hey, Mocha.
That that one's Cappuccino. And the one up the back there is Layla. And that's the mum for the brown one. The two chocolate-coloured ones, unfortunately, the mum passed away about 2 weeks after birthing them because there was a third fetus that hadn't passed through, and so it became necrotic internally, and she died from internal blood poisoning. So that was a real shame. Good animal. But yeah, the garden's just prolific, and my family, my sisters and my parents are very, very thankful for all the food that I'm providing them on a weekly basis. And whatever I don't give away or actually share with friends, it's a case of it goes to chickens, it goes to creating more compost and things like that. But speaking of big changes on the farm, I'll just walk up the front here a little bit. As we were talking about a couple of days ago, I've been doing some very large changes to the front part of the property to generate some pasture. That's because this place because it's all forest. It's very very challenging to actually have any grazing animals, and so because I want to have more goats and more animals on the farm, I've started generating some pasture. Now I'm trying to do it with all of the planning that you would do with permaculture, and it's actually starting to come up really well. And so as you can see here, this is all oats, but not only is there oats in here, there's actually also peas. And so when you get down to the soil level, you can see the peas are starting to come up there now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's going to be a mix of peas and oats. And so the oats will generate soil stability. It'll generate a lot of compost with the roots when it dies off, but also then the peas will fix nitrogen, and then there'll be a large mat area where I can then clear this off and till all of it back in, and then put another pasture grain variety in to generate the next run through to actually then start building the soil up and up and up and up and up. And in this area here, I've got nothing but peas. This is all peas. And so this is about 2/3 of an acre of just peas. There's some vetch in there as well. Vetch is a miniature pea, bit like alfalfa. But this is all going to come up in the next week or so with the rain that's coming. And I've been watering with the fire hose. You can also see I've then got a patch of tillage radish. And then we get into the large area up here. Now that's 4 to 5 acres of oats and vetch that I did back at the beginning of March. Now, at the beginning of March, we had record rainfall. It was the most rainfall in a month that we've ever had. And I set all this seed a week before it started. Perfect timing. So the level of growth now is fantastic. So this is the vetch. Very similar to alfalfa. It's a very fine little pea, but it's a fantastic pasture.
Oh my God.
And effectively you can see what I've done is I have effectively just weaved through the trees. So I haven't touched any of the forest, but what I've done is I've removed that fine, very fire-prone scrub that I've got here. Because I've got a lot of areas like this. And this is effectively what it looked like beforehand. Now, this is a very, very fire-prone plant. It's called Dervaes mimosa, but it's a nitrogen fixer. And so when you till this into the soil, you're instantly creating an energetic place to grow things from.
Amazing.
And you can collect seeds from that very easily, and it comes back. It's like a weed. And so I can, with that in mind, I can continually just push a lot of compost into the soil and then have a lot of nitrogen releasing over a period of time along with the composting. I'm going to be spraying this with EM1 this weekend. I've got a 1,000 litre batch down there. And so I'm going to be spraying this 5-acre area with that because there is another good bit of rain coming. So, yeah, that will just make it explode. It'll be fantastic. But, the whole area is looking a lot better now. This also provides me good fire barriers. It means that it's less of an issue to clear because there's no shrubs and brush, and doing fire protection on grass is a lot easier. But the big work that I'll be doing after this video is I'm going to be going up the front half of the property where my best soil is, because right at the very front of the property there's a flat area, and that flat area has collected runoff for a long period of time. It's built a lovely big alluvial loam, and it's just fantastic soil. And so I'm going to be planting 200 kilos of faba beans, and so that's about 440 pounds. I'm just walking up to the tractor now to show you all the bags. But effectively, I've got 8 25-kilo bags of faba beans, good to go. Now, the reason why I've got my bee jacket there is because that area up the front of the property is right next to a very large European wasp nest that I need to destroy with the tractor at the same time. So that's why that's there. But that will be something that I will be putting on my website. The progress of the permaculture work that I'm doing here and the large growing areas to generate more soil carbon are going to be things that I'm going to be sharing with people online through solarminimum.net, purely because I'm now a member of Soils for Life organisation, which is basically a bunch of farmers around Australia that are trying to increase the amount of soil carbon, not for climatic reasons or any other reason other than the fact that getting carbon back into your soils means that you're going to get a better crop. It means that you're going to achieve a better outcome with your growth, and you're not going to be so reliant upon fertilizers and pesticides and things like that. So I love permaculture, but there are limitations at scale for small blocks like mine. And so I'm doing a little bit of traditional agriculture, but I'm making sure that I actually implement some of the common sense knowledge that I've built from learning permaculture into that planting, so that it's not monoculture and I'm not using fertilizer, but I'm using the soil creating plants like faba beans, because when you plant bulk faba beans, you can create bulk soil from it in the first year.
Yeah,
so
indeed.
That's the plan, but it also means that there'll be a 3/4 to a full acre block area of faba beans that will be this tall by spring. And so I could also provide hundreds, if not a ton of faba bean by that time. So my neighbours, it's right next to my neighbour's place, and they're very excited to see it happen. And the good thing is that I've got a whole bunch of neighbours here that are now joining in doing this type of thing with me. I've brought a lot of them along for the ride. 2 doors down, we put in a huge 2-acre greenhouse, which is just a series of metal hoops with poly over the top. But he's got a very different soil type to me here, because there's a big fault line between here and there. I'm on the sedimentary, he's on the old volcanic. So very different. But wow, this is just so much fun doing all of these experiments and actually generating new ways of doing things that everybody says you can't do that there. You can't grow that there. And I'm going, but I am. And what's hard about it? You try a little plot, you do a little area, you see how it goes. This is my trial plot. In fact, I'll go over and I'll show you. So back late last year, I put in a tiny little spot here behind this mess, basically a tree came down. And this is a little trial plot that I put in. And this is all tillage radish, which is effectively a fast-growing daikon radish like version. But there was also sorghum in here, and there was also peas, and they've all cycled through, and the radish are the parts that are left behind. The amount of soil that's actually been tilled by this radish has been fantastic. It's the soil's light, but at the moment I'm also providing huge amounts of bee food. So you can see the bees are really enjoying the radish flowers.
Yeah, they love them.
And having a transition crop like this, and it's only a small patch. It's only probably 20 or 30 feet by 20 or 30 feet. Not a huge area, but I've pulled out daikon radish out of here that have been about half the size of the one that I showed you on the table down there. But as you can see, it's starting to collapse now. There's lots of seed pods forming, and so there's a lot of extra regrowth that'll come back from this. But it's all an experiment.
Now
every single experiment
let's talk.
is working.
Let's talk. Yeah, indeed. Because once you start trying different techniques, you're going to see what works, and you're going to go with that. But you're going with proven systems. And one thing I would ask you to add to your orchard area is rye, because when we used rye in the driest areas here, it outperformed oats. It outperformed every economical grain we could buy. I don't know why the rye outperformed it, but in a desert environment where we were, the rye seemed to be the best erosion control and xeric grain. So if you can get rye for cheap.
Okay.
But I wanted to talk about the price point for your tillage radish. Around here, we can get a 25 kilo bag, a 50 pound, for about 124 American dollars. Is it around the same price?
Yes. It's probably a little bit more here. I think I paid about 246 Australian, same size bag. So it's probably about a quarter value. But that's also probably because I didn't buy with a agricultural account at the local agriculture store. I bought it as just a walk-in customer, and I probably didn't get the agricultural discount that I'm now getting because I'm now buying bulk seed from these seeds.
So let's talk.
They're now recognizing I'm doing stuff. So.
Yeah, let's talk about the fava bean. So what are you getting that for a 25 kilo?
25 kilos was $20 each.
Wow. So we don't have...
That's dirt cheap.
Yeah, we don't have any source of broad bean like that. Now, are those treated? Yeah. Can you literally take that bag, soak it in water, and eat them?
Yes. Yeah, these are untreated. They've come from a series of organic farms out near Cowra, New South Wales.
Wow.
And Australia, southeast corner of Australia, there's a lot of fava bean being grown for commercial fodder for animals. So there's a lot of feed providers that will then grind that down, put that into a pellet, and add it to chicken feed and other things like that.
Yeah.
They also do it a lot for cover crops during winter, and so there's a huge number of properties that are growing it around the state for cover crop, and that means that it's generally a very cheap seed. Because there's an equity of scale of that many going through. It's the same with the field pea. The field peas are only about $22 a bag for 25 kilos.
Those are
the only expensive thing.
The field peas here are about just under 100 for a 50, so $2 a pound. So that's way more.
Yeah. Ours are probably about half. Crazy. But the only expensive thing for me has been the vetch and the tillage radish, because they're both in that tiny seed form. Anything that's in tiny seed, like a lot of the field brassicas that you can buy to put in as well to add extra elements to your soil, they're ridiculously expensive as well. But the larger legumes, real cheap, and that means that you can get a lot of greenery in very quickly. You don't need to fertilize fava beans at all, and that's the beautiful thing about them.
Yeah.
They pull nitrogen from the atmosphere, they punch it down to the nodules in the ground, and they create a lot of green manure initially, and then as they die off, they create a lot of brown manure. And so there's a high value in actually planting large amounts of fava beans if you've got the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, and I would also recommend supplementing that or rotating it with an amaranth, because amaranth depletes the soil almost not at all. So after you've fixed the nitrogen in the soil with the fava bean one year, you can plant the amaranth the next year, which won't deplete the soil at all, create a huge amount of biomass and seed for you, and then you could cut the seed heads off and drop that biomass down to build more soil. Amaranth, and then you could harvest the amaranth leaf all year for cooking. So it's an amazing plant. Whereas the fava bean contains some more caustic, dangerous chemicals that are slightly carcinogenic, that are slightly allergic to some people. You only want to eat the bean in low numbers and cook it well. And there's a lot of people that actually can't eat the bean. So there's some problems with the fava bean that aren't with the amaranth.
That's right. Yeah. So the idea behind what I'm doing with this patch in particular, with the broad beans, fava beans, is largely to create an area that's very suitable then for potatoes, because I want to do a large to do potatoes, and so I need that nitrogen fixed in there, and I need that fresh mix of brown and green organics in there, so I can then plant a close to 1 acre area of potatoes. And I'm really excited to be able to try and do that, because potatoes are a soil amender themselves. They do, in fact, help the soil, particularly when you leave them there to rot as well.
Yeah.
The amount of areas around parts of New South Wales that you can go to, and you wonder why the soil's so good. And you look into the history of it, and the entire area used to just be huge crops of potatoes. And they've stopped cropping them, but all the after effects of the potato rotting in the ground has continued on, and they're just good things. So, and they're dead easy to look after. You hardly need to water them. You just got to give them a chance to get their roots down and have a bit of coverage over the top of them, and away you go.
Yeah,
they are so easy to plant. It generates so much food for you.
And it's the one tuber where you're inclined not to put any amendments in, because they don't do as well. So if you're planting potatoes and you think you're going to throw in some compost, it's not going to do well. The nutrients have to be in place when you put that tuber in. Now you're at zone 7. Giles, so you could be doing purple sweet potato there, or any version of sweet potato. It's a longer duration. It's 110, 120 day crop, but you're going to get more nutrients and have a perennial. I bet you some of the perennial tubers will last through the winter and pop back up in the spring. Dang, dang. So that's like a perpetually planting crop. Now, we can't do sweet potato here, but what I'm going to try to do in our Zone 8 greenhouse that we're just finishing is to do some sweet potato in those big fabric pots, like the 50-gallon.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to try some of that in the greenhouse and see how it goes.
So, I did grow sweet potato here last year. And it was my first year for attempting it. And I grew the purple and white variety that's here in Australia. And it grew extremely well. And I was surprised by that. Unfortunately, I did get it in late. And so when I did pull it out, it was probably too early. And so the tubers weren't very large, but they did go. And they did survive the first frosts that came through. They did get some wilting and everything like that. But sweet potatoes and some of the local yam species are ones that I'm willing to try as well. There's actually a page on my website which I've started talking about local foraging and what you can do when you're foraging in your local area. And on one page in particular, there's a species of tuber called the fringe lily. And that is one that grows prolifically around this property and generates a large tuber, probably about half the size of that daikon radish that I showed you. And they've got a high nutrient value, but they're quite slow growing. So there are a whole stack of tuber-based plants that grow in the area. And so it's just a case of doing a little bit of experiment, one after another, and seeing what goes. And so any opportunity to potentially... Sorry, I just saw a rabbit. Caught my attention. Any chance to grow something new is fantastic, and I'm willing to try your ideas with the sweet potato, and we'll see how I go.
And I got some better ideas for you. I just researched all the subtropical fruits and berries that we can grow in our new greenhouse, and there is a new variety of Cavendish banana that grows to zone 7, which is a low of 18 to 20 degrees, which you can plant outside. It's called the Mighty Mini Cavendish. You can pick up some of the plants in our country from Florida for about $8 each. But bananas can grow to zone 7, Suriname cherries. You already have guava planted out there, but there are other certain types of subtropicals that are completely amazing that we're trying here in our greenhouse. Do you guys have mulberries over there?
Yeah, I've actually got 8 of them already, and I'm growing a whole bunch from grafts at the moment to then progress with more, because that strip of land up through there where I've got the pasture grass, I'm going to create some more swales in there and then plant a much larger orchard. I've already got 68 fruit trees planted already, but I want to put in another 100 or so up there. Once that pasture's set in and it's set the soil nicely, I'll then generate a few swales to capture some additional water and then plant those additional orchards in there. But one thing that I've got to deal with here is the wildlife.
Yeah.
The birds around here, in particular the parrots and the cockatoos, they'll get into every single tree and destroy every single piece of fruit that you've got, because they want to get to the seed. They don't eat the fruit.
No.
And so, as you may have remembered, I've had to net everything by putting large hoops over. And so there's 4 trees here, and it's just a case of putting some star picket steel in and then some poly pipe over the top. And then I put a net over it during spring and summer. But I'll be doing a long tunnel up there. So basically I have an entrance door at one side and then a pair of trees with potentially down the middle like I've got here. I've got red currants, black currants, and miniature fruit trees down the middle. So basically filling in the gaps, using the space as dynamically as possible, but then protecting the whole lot in one hit. And that means that also I can then, within that tunnel, I can then chop and drop and just continue to look after it. And it's nice and easy, but it means that I will get every single piece of fruit rather than losing just about all of it to the native birds.
And what we've done in our greenhouse, and you have that big greenhouse there, is we've bought dwarf varieties of blueberry that we can plant in containers, dwarf varieties of raspberry and blackberry, dwarf varieties of pineapple and banana and passion fruit that all stay in the greenhouse all year because they're zone 9. So it actually needs to be warmer than it is where you are. So you could actually be growing some perpetual winter fruits in your greenhouse if you started experimenting with those subtropicals.
Yeah, no, it's something that I've been thinking about doing. It's just a case of I've been cycling through, because this is the first season with the greenhouse.
Exactly.
It's been a case of I've been learning a lot. As you know, when you first get a greenhouse, you've got to consider the location of the greenhouse, the direction it's facing to the sun, the airflow, and as you know, I've built a geothermal setup. So that black tank there has a large loop of water pipe running through the ground underneath the ground, and it's actually percolating through a thermosiphon effect. So basically, hot water going up to the top, cold water dropping down, and it just circulates through and generates a very simple, constant warmth in here at night time. And in most cases, even on those nights where it got down to -4 or -5 degrees Celsius, I came out and I checked the thermometer and it was 8 or 9 degrees inside the greenhouse. So you're right, I can grow just about anything in here and not be worried about frost, particularly if I grow things close to the tank. And so I could quite easily put in some larger planter boxes with some good dense soil in there and try some of those tropical species. So it's on the list. It's just a case of I've got so much going on, and you know that I do all this myself. I very rarely have help, and so it's a case of, because I'm doing everything myself, I've got to stage my priorities, and my priorities at the moment are getting those large soil amendments going with the pastures and things like that.
Well, I can attest to the need for help. So I'll send Alan out for a weekend, and you'll get and everything will get done.
I need my own alien Alan, yes.
All right. Well, that was a fantastic introduction to what's going on there in the fall over at Jingara. And if you want to check out Giles himself, he's been working hard on solarminimum.net here, his website. So come check that out and give him support there. Is there anything that you want to tell people about the website before we finish up tonight, CF?
Yeah, sure. So basically, it's a lot more in depth than the first version of the website I had. I've started adding bits and pieces of what I'm doing here on the farm, as well as tracking the major weather patterns around Antarctica, which is what I'm actually most interested in, because it is actually the most important thing for our winter weather pattern here in Australia. So all the information I've got there is streaming from a lot of good sites. The data is very good, and I'm also going to be starting to develop a small model for interactions between Antarctica and geomagnetics and cosmic rays and things like that. So I've got a lot of data thoughts going through a process at the moment. I'm trying to build a database and a model at the moment. That's a while away. There's a lot of work involved and a bit of storage that I need to pay for to do that. But I'm doing the website completely out of my own pocket. I'm not asking for any support. And I'm just thoroughly enjoying collecting all this information and putting it out there. But I'm also putting bits and pieces of permaculture, being resilient, prepping. I'm actually pulling away from the word prepping a bit, and I'm actually pushing it more towards resilience, because I believe that the term prepping has gone way and beyond, and is being abused by a lot of people in many ways, when effectively I find the use of the word resilience planning to be far more effective and better at describing what I'm doing. The website's got about 12 or 13 pages in it, with a lot of content in each of those pages. Go and have a look. The first homepage has got basically a link there that if you want or believe that I could do some content of a particular type, send me a suggestion. My email's there. It's giles@solarminimum.net. Feel free to send me an email and suggest what content I could put on there that may benefit you. The reality is that it's a fantastic opportunity to pull some bits and pieces together that will benefit our community.
Well, that sounds absolutely excellent. Proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance. When you and I are teaching self-reliance, we're teaching resilience.
That's it.
We're teaching, it is a type of preparedness, but we're not preppers. And herein lies the issue. The prepper has a closet full of food, and he just sits there and he waits for an event. You and I are creating a new reality where if an event were to occur, nothing would change in our lives, except we would continue to be doing the same
Correct.
things. And that is the kind of transition that everyone should be looking for. A smooth transition from one paradigm to the other, because you're self-reliant, you are self-sufficient, and you're a permaculturalist. You use the margin to gain abundance. And that's what you and I are trying to do. It takes years of trial and error, of experimentation to actually nail this on the head. And no one ever nails it. Even the oldest permaculturalists are still learning things today. Their minds are still being blown by people like Matt Powers that are jamming all the new information into a single textbook. And people like you and I that are trying to implement this in different environments around the world. Final words.
Yeah. That interview you did with Matt the other day was absolutely amazing. I'm using his book as often as I possibly can. Anytime I've got a question about something that I'm doing, I flick through that soil science book, and it is just absolutely amazingly helpful. It allows you to get insights into things like that. So when listen to Diamond, listen to Matt. There's a whole stack of information that these guys are going out of their way to share. And I learnt so much from yourself and from Matt and from a whole stack of others that I'm now implementing. And you've just seen the rewards of just that simple advice and trying something. Don't be afraid to try it. You know, I've failed so many times on so many things, but I'm failing less now.
Yeah.
Because I'm actually I'm starting to see the pattern, like I do with the weather and climate. When I was forecasting the weather and climate, I could see the pattern in the models, and I could actually then predict it. And some of my predictions were actually damn accurate, and in some cases, scarily accurate to a actual storm event. That got me into trouble with my employer, and hence why I've taken down my website. But the reality, sorry, my YouTube channel, that is. But you will see through my website there will be the occasional weather report coming through on the Australian Weather tab, but I will stay away from pointing fingers at people.
Oh dear.
Thank you, Diamond. I have to thank you tremendously for you being you, and I watch your channel, every channel of yours, and every video that you create, and you've always got my support. Thank you.
Well, and I love your hat. We appreciate you, Giles. And just a heads up, after the Matt Powers interview, his book jumped up in farm and gardening on Amazon to the #3 bestseller. So that's how we do it. We share information. People listen to it. They take what they want and they leave the rest, and they react. And apparently we had a very convincing podcast, and some people wanted to go get that book, and they did. And that's how it works. So after this interview, people are going to go check out your website, and they're going to get some information they need. And that's just how we bring everyone up together. We're in it to win it. And that's why we're here.
It is very Australian focused, that website, but you will garner bits and pieces of information around Pacific Decadal Oscillation and other bits and pieces which may assist with understanding weather. So I am reaching out to add some Northern Hemisphere components in there, but I do focus heavily just on the Southern Hemisphere on that website.
Okay, we appreciate you guys. Check out Giles' website, solarminimum.net. He's working on it. And thank you for the tour. I mean, that was amazing, and we appreciate you. Giles over at Jingara in Australia, picking it up and putting it down. Be safe.
Thanks, Diamond. Love you, mate.